Heron Bay, Maine, was a town that time seemed to have forgotten, or perhaps simply overlooked. Nestled along a rugged stretch of coastline, its faded glory was evident in the peeling paint of its clapboard houses and the skeletal remains of what were once bustling fishing docks. The air, perpetually thick with the scent of salt and damp pine, carried a faint melancholy, a whisper of a prosperous maritime past that had long since dwindled to a trickle of tourism. And even that was dwindling, as visitors now preferred the sleek, modern attractions of larger, more vibrant coastal cities. The local kids, immersed in the digital glow of their smartphones, were obsessed with fleeting social media trends, the latest gadgets, and the shiny promise of virtual worlds. They held a subtle, yet pervasive, disdain for anything old, anything dirty, anything that smacked of the tangible, forgotten history of their own town. In a modest house near the old, largely neglected fishing docks, lived Clara Monroe, a quiet, observant girl of 12. While her peers chased digital fleeting trends, Clara found solace and fascination in the forgotten. Her passion was unusual, even peculiar, collecting old, discarded glass bottles. She found them everywhere, nestled in the muddy riverbanks that snaked through the town's outskirts, half buried in the decaying historical sites near the original settlement, or, sometimes, miraculously, washed ashore in the less frequented inlets of the bay. To others, they were worthless junk, refuse, something to be recycled or discarded. To Clara, each bottle, with its unique imperfections, its subtle tints of sea glass green or sun-baked amber, held a story. She saw beauty in their weathered surfaces, a history in their imperfections, and the potential for a hidden narrative within their dusty confines. Clara's unusual hobby meant she often moved through the world with a quiet solitude, a gentle detachment from the boisterous social currents of her peers. In the school cafeteria, while other kids clustered around tables, their heads bowed over glowing screens, sharing memes and selfies, Clara often ate her lunch alone. Her gaze, however, wasn't fixed on a screen, but on the shifting light through the cafeteria window, or the subtle patterns in the chipped linoleum floor. After school, instead of joining the after-school clubs or heading to the local arcade, she would disappear into her backyard. There, by an old, rusted pump, she would meticulously wash her latest finds in a battered tin bucket, her small hands gently scrubbing away years of grime, revealing the latent beauty of the glass. The rhythmic swish of the water, the dull clink of glass, was a meditative ritual, a stark contrast to the relentless chatter of her classmates. She was an easy target for the town's resident queen bee, Bethany Miller, a popular, materialistic classmate who wielded her social media following like a weapon. Bethany, surrounded by her equally disdainful clique, would often parade past Clara, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Look, everyone, it's trash collector. Clara and her valuable junk," she'd jeer, her friends giggling on cue. "Why don't you get a real hobby?" Clara, like, something clean, something new. Are you really going to spend your life picking up other people's trash? The cruel words, designed to sting, usually landed. Clara would flinch, her shoulders hunching slightly, but she never retaliated. She would simply retreat further into her world of old glass, her silent dignity a quiet defiance. Even her parents, though loving and well-meaning, didn't quite understand her passion. They saw her collection, neatly organized on shelves in her bedroom, as a quirky phase, a harmless if slightly unusual childhood preoccupation. "Clara, sweetheart," her mother might say gently, glancing at a particularly muddy find. "Are you sure you want to bring that inside? It's just an old bottle. Dear, we could get you some nice, new art supplies. Maybe her father would offer. It's a good way to stay active, I suppose, exploring the bay. But don't get your hopes up for anything valuable. Sweetie, they're just old bottles. Their gentle dismissiveness was almost more painful than Bethany's open mockery, for it implied that her genuine pursuit held no real value, no potential beyond a quaint, childish whim. One blustery Saturday afternoon, while exploring a particularly neglected stretch of the old fishing docks, a place abandoned to the elements and largely forgotten by the town, Clara noticed a frantic struggle amidst a pile of discarded fishing netting. A young seagull, its powerful wings tangled in the fine, almost invisible mesh, thrashed desperately, its cries raw and pitiful, its plight mirrored, in a strange way, the hidden struggles Clara often felt. Despite the immediate danger of the sharp, unseen hooks often embedded in such netting, and the potential for the bird to peck her, Clara didn't hesitate. With quiet determination and gentle, practiced hands, she approached the terrified bird. She spoke to it in low, soothing murmurs, her voice a balm against its fear. She meticulously worked at the knots, her small fingers surprisingly deft as she untangled the fine strands. It was a painstaking task, requiring patience and precision. Once freed, the seagull collapsed, its wing bent at an unnatural angle. Clara saw the clear break. Without thinking, she gathered materials from her collection bag, a sturdy piece of driftwood, surprisingly smooth and straight, and strips of clean, old canvas she always kept on hand for wrapping her delicate finds. With the same quiet concentration she applied to cleaning a particularly rare bottle, she gently splinted the seagull's wing, binding it securely but not too tightly. She then carefully carried the bird back to her house, nursing it back to health in secret, in a makeshift nest in her shed. She fed it scraps of fish, brought it fresh water, and spoke to it as if it understood every word. This act, done entirely without expectation of praise or reward, showcased her inherent kindness, her profound empathy for the vulnerable, and her remarkable ability to find value and life in neglected, discarded things. It solidified her quiet dignity, a core of compassion that defied the world's indifference. Clara had an unusual, almost intuitive knack for finding bottles that seemed to call to her. It wasn't just about sharp eyesight. It was a subtle, almost psychic pull towards certain pieces of glass, often from unlikely or dangerous spots where others wouldn't even think to look. A glint of green from under a precariously balanced pile of rocks, the distinct curve of an antique soda bottle half buried in shifting sand. These were not random finds. She would feel a strange, prickling sensation on her skin, a low hum in her ears, a faint tremor in her hands, drawing her towards a specific location. She often attributed it to just a good feeling, but it was subtly more than that, hinting at an unusual, almost empathic connection to the discarded artifacts of history. She had a recurring dream, a vivid, fragmented memory that haunted her waking hours. In it, she saw a specific, unusual bottle, its glass a deep, shimmering blue, glowing faintly with an internal light. It was accompanied by the phantom whisper of an old sea shanty, mournful and haunting, and a fragmented image of a long-lost ship, its sails torn, battling a colossal storm off the coast of Heron Bay. The details were too precise to be mere fantasy. The specific shape of the ship's mast, the intricate carvings on its bow, the particular pattern of its distress flags. Clara also possessed a tattered, old map of Heron Bay, passed down from her great-grandfather, a taciturn fisherman who had spent his life navigating the treacherous waters of the coast. The map, hand-drawn and faded, was covered with cryptic annotations in a spidery script. Hidden currents, lost markers, the whisper reef, the sorrows deep. She often pored over it, tracing the lines, trying to decipher the arcane notes, feeling a strange resonance with its forgotten knowledge. These small, seemingly insignificant details, her intuitive finds, her recurring dream, her great-grandfather's cryptic map, were the subtle seeds of mystery Elias carried, hints of a deeper connection to the bay's untold stories, waiting for the inevitable moment when her quiet passion would collide with a century of forgotten truth. She was not just a collector. She was a quiet seeker, a living echo of the bay's untold history. The rhythmic pull of the tides often dictated Clara's explorations, drawing her to the most secluded, often treacherous, corners of Heron Bay. These were places that locals, with their pragmatic minds, typically avoided. Rocky inlets where the currents were unpredictable, shadowed coves notorious for forgotten shipwrecks, their jagged teeth still lurking beneath the waves. It was on one such blustery afternoon, the air thick with the promise of rain, that Clara ventured further than usual, her intuition tugging her towards a narrow, wave-battered cleft in the granite cliffs. This particular cove, whispered about in hushed tones by the town's older fishermen, was rumored to hold remnants of countless maritime disasters. A watery graveyard where the bay's secrets came to rest. She scrambled over slick, barnacle-encrusted rocks, the wind whipping strands of hair across her face, tasting the salt on her lips. Her eyes, trained by years of patient searching, scanned the debris line left by the last high tide. Most of it was the usual flotsam tangled rope, splintered wood, modern plastic waste. But then, a subtle glimmer caught her eye. Partially obscured by a tangle of dark seaweed and wet sand, it was a bottle. Unlike any she had found before, she knelt, her heart giving an excited thump, and carefully dislodged it from its sandy bed. It was made of deep, rich amber glass, its surface surprisingly smooth despite its evident age. It possessed an unusual weight in her hand, a heft that spoke not of emptiness, but of something solid within. As she turned it over, light catching its imperfections, she felt a strange, almost magnetic pull, a resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate directly into her fingertips. It wasn't just a bottle. It felt like a silent, ancient whisper. Inside, through the cloudy, century-old glass, she discerned a faint, tightly rolled piece of parchment. Her breath hitched. A message in a bottle. The stuff of legends. Her excitement, a quiet tremor at first, quickly surged into an overwhelming tide. This wasn't just another beautiful find. This was something entirely different. Something significant. Back in the quiet solitude of her shed, the rescued seagull now stirring contentedly in its makeshift nest, Clara began the delicate process of extracting the message. Her excitement, however, quickly turned into a frustrating, almost maddening challenge. The parchment was old, incredibly fragile, and wedged impossibly tight within the narrow neck of the bottle. She tried with tweezers, then with a slender piece of wire. Her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Minutes stretched into hours. Her hands cramped, her brow furrowed with effort, and a cold dread began to set in. What if she damaged it? What if this incredible find was ruined by her impatience? The thought of destroying a century-old secret spurred her on. Finally, with a soft pop and a gentle pull, the parchment slid free. It was tightly rolled, yellowed with age, and tied with a brittle, faded piece of string, her hands trembling. Clara carefully unrolled it on her workbench, flattening it gently. The message, written in faded, looping ink, was a cryptic puzzle, a series of fragmented sentences and strange symbols that seemed to hint at a dark, untold story. It wasn't a distress call, not a simple plea for help. It spoke of betrayal, of hidden currents, of a fabled sapphire known as the Azure Tear, and most chillingly, it hinted at the true, nefarious location of the Heron's Lament, a legendary ghost ship, laden with valuable cargo, that had vanished over 100 years ago during a notorious storm off Heron Bay. The Heron's Lament wasn't just a local legend. Its disappearance was a deeply ingrained, unsolved mystery in the town's history, whispered about in hushed tones, a source of endless speculation and a lingering ache in the collective memory of Heron Bay. Its lost cargo, particularly the mythical Azure Tear, was part of the town's very folklore, a tantalizing whisper of unimaginable wealth and a tragic past. But the message Clara held in her hands didn't speak of a noble ship lost to a storm. It directly implicated a well-respected, powerful founding family of Heron Bay, the Thorndikes, in the ship's deliberate sinking. a crime of greed and sabotage carefully concealed for generations. This discovery, raw and shocking, thrust Clara, the quiet collector of discarded glass, into a complex adult world of historical intrigue, dangerous secrets, and potentially devastating repercussions, far beyond the innocent confines of her quiet hobby. Clara's initial reaction was a whirlwind of disbelief, followed by overwhelming excitement that made her heart pound like a drum against her ribs. She reread the message again and again, her eyes tracing the faded script, trying to reconcile the fantastical tale with the gritty reality of the ink-stained parchment in her hands. Could this really be true? Could a simple bottle, found in a forgotten cove, really hold the key to a century-old mystery? The weight of the parchment felt immense, a tangible piece of history. Then came a profound sense of responsibility. This wasn't just a game, a thrilling discovery. This was a truth, a potential scandal, a historical injustice that had festered beneath the surface of Heron Bay for generations. She was faced with a stark choice: dismiss it as an elaborate hoax, a cruel joke, and retreat back into the safe, predictable world of her quiet hobby, or pursue the truth, no matter where it led. The message, with its whispers of betrayal and its call for justice, awakened a dormant courage within her, a quiet but firm resolve she hadn't known she possessed. She realized, with a dawning clarity, that her quiet hobby, her ridiculed passion for the overlooked, had led her to something monumental, something that could either bring unforeseen glory to her town or unleash dangerous, far-reaching repercussions. The excitement was now mingled with a chilling sense of dread. Her first instinct, despite her earlier rejections, was to share this incredible find, to seek validation from the adults she trusted. She raced into the house, her hands clutching the precious message, the amber bottle tucked carefully under her arm. "Mom, Dad, you won't believe what I found. It's a message from the Heron's lament." Her parents, seated at the kitchen table, their faces tired from a long day, looked up, their smiles polite but distracted. "Oh, that's nice, dear," her mother said, without truly looking at the crumpled parchment. "Another old bottle for your collection. That's lovely. Just be careful not to get too muddy." Her father, reaching for the parchment, tried to be encouraging. "Let me see. Sweetie, probably just a kid's prank, isn't it?" As he gently took the rolled message from her, his thumb, slightly damp from a spilled drink, inadvertently rubbed against a corner of the fragile parchment. A small, vital corner of the message, containing a single faded symbol that might have been part of a key, crumbled into dust. Clara gasped. A sharp, choked sound. She snatched the message back, her eyes wide with dismay. The crucial information remained, but the fragility of the document and her parents' casual dismissal hit her with a painful clarity. They didn't grasp the significance. They saw only an old piece of paper, another piece of junk. Later that week, still buzzing with the secret, Clara tried to confide in her history teacher, Mr. Davies, a kind but traditional man who adhered strictly to textbook narratives. She approached him after class, carefully recounting her discovery, trying to convey the immense weight of the message. Mr. Davies listened patiently, a polite smile on his face, but his eyes held that familiar, gentle dismissiveness. He patted her head. "Clara, that's a wonderful imagination you have. Dear, the Heron's Lament is a fascinating legend, but just that, a legend. Sometimes, a bottle is just a bottle, and a message is just a child's fantasy." He politely but firmly dismissed it as a childish fantasy, advising her to focus on her upcoming history exam. This dual rejection, coupled with the fragile nature of the message and the accidental damage, made Clara realize a terrifying truth: she could not rely on others to believe her. Her parents, her teacher, the world around her, They were too entrenched in their own certainties, too quick to dismiss the unconventional. The secret of the message was hers, and hers alone to protect. She was now the sole keeper of a profound, dangerous secret, a truth that could shake the very foundations of Heron Bay. Her quiet world was irrevocably shattered. The path forward was murky, perilous, and entirely her own. She was no longer just a girl collecting bottles. She was a keeper of history, a reluctant detective, and a potential disruptor of a century-old lie. The fragile parchment, with its cryptic century-old message, weighed heavily in Clara's small hands, a burden both exhilarating and terrifying. Her parents' casual dismissal, Mr. Davies's polite but firm disbelief, had solidified a stark truth: she was on her own. The secret of the Heron's lament and the nefarious involvement of the Thorndikes was hers to bear, and hers to pursue. Yet, she knew she couldn't unravel a century-old mystery entirely alone. She needed an ally, someone who understood history, someone who might, just might, believe in the extraordinary. Her thoughts, reluctantly, turned to Mr. Silas Croft. Mr. Silas Croft was the gruff, often cantankerous curator of the struggling Heron Bay Historical Society. The society itself was a dusty, underfunded relic, tucked away in an old Victorian house on the less traveled side of town. Mr. Croft, a man in his late 60s, with a perpetually furrowed brow and a scent of old books clinging to his tweed jacket, was known throughout Heron Bay for his profound cynicism towards local legends and anything that smacked of romanticized folklore. He prided himself on hard facts, meticulously documented history, and scoffed at whispers of ghost ships and lost treasures. To him, the Heron's lament was a tragedy. Yes, but a simple, natural one. A ship lost to the sea's fury. Nothing more. He was a man deeply entrenched in his own certainties. A challenging audience for any fantastical tale, Clara approached the Historical Society with a mixture of trepidation and desperate hope. The doorbell chimed a faint, mournful tune as she pushed open the heavy oak door. The air inside was cool and still, heavy with the scent of aged paper and forgotten wood polish. Mr. Croft was, as usual, hunched over a cluttered desk, peering at a magnifying glass over a faded photograph. Mr. Croft. Clara's voice was a hesitant whisper. He grunted, looking up, his gaze sharp. "Clara, isn't it young Miss Monroe? Lost your way from school or come to ask about the price of an old button?" His tone was typically brusque, a subtle barrier against frivolous inquiries. Clara clutched the amber bottle and the carefully folded message. "No, sir. I found something. Something important." She placed the bottle gently on his desk, then carefully unfolded the message beside it. "It's from the Heron's lament." Mr. Croft's eyes, initially dismissive, flickered towards the bottle. His hand, surprisingly delicate, reached out, his fingers tracing the amber glass, his brow furrowed deeper. This is unusually old. And that glass, it's a specific European make, very rare for this coast." He picked up the message, his expression still skeptical, but a flicker of academic intrigue igniting in his gaze. He began to read, his lips moving silently, tracing the faded ink. As he read, Clara, eager to make him understand, began to speak, her voice gaining confidence. She described, in meticulous detail, the treacherous, secluded cove where she had found the bottle. "It's the one they call Devil's Snare Point, isn't it, Mr. Croft? The one where the currents shift so fast even the gulls avoid it." Mr. Croft, who knew every dangerous inlet of the bay, nodded almost imperceptibly. "And the bottle," Clara continued, her eyes fixed on his. "It almost called to me. It had this strange weight, and a hum. And the message, it talks about hidden currents and the captain's sorrow. And this specific symbol." She pointed to a faint, faded symbol, etched into the bottle's base, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. It's like the one on my great-grandfather's old map, the lost marker he drew next to the Whisper Reef. Mr. Croft picked up a magnifying glass and peered at the symbol on the bottle. Then, he rose from his desk and walked to a large, glass-encased map on the wall, a very old, original hydrographic chart of Heron Bay, rarely displayed due to its fragile condition. He found the section Clara mentioned, and his finger traced a faded, almost indistinguishable mark. It was identical. He returned to his desk, his expression a complex mixture of profound skepticism and dawning intellectual curiosity. Devil's Snare Point is notoriously difficult to access, and the currents there, they're fierce, he murmured, almost to himself. And that symbol, it's an obscure nautical chart marker, used only by a specific line of 19th century cartographers, largely forgotten. And you, a 12-year-old girl, simply know this. He looked at Clara. His eyes narrowed. You claim an old bottle, found in a forgotten place, contains a message that implicates one of Heron Bay's founding families in a century-old crime. This is highly improbable, young lady. It smells of a hoax, or a very vivid imagination. He was trying to dismiss her intuition as childish fantasy, to reduce her uncanny knowledge to mere coincidence. But her precise, almost uncanny interpretations of the century-old nautical language and obscure local references within the message, combined with the undeniable authenticity of the bottle and the matching symbol on his own rare chart, began to chip away at his entrenched cynicism. He saw not just a girl, but a seeker, someone with a remarkable, intuitive understanding of history that defied his academic training. He was torn between his professional skepticism, which demanded empirical proof, and a dawning, intellectual curiosity that urged him to investigate. He looked at Clara, then at the bottle, then back at the cryptic message. A flicker of possibility, against all his ingrained beliefs, began to ignite within him. Without a word, Mr. Croft opened a large, dusty ledger labeled Unsolved Maritime Cases, Heron Bay. He began to cross-reference the date on the message with old newspaper clippings about the Heron's lament. He pulled out ancient ship manifests, comparing them to the hints of cargo in the message. He wasn't outwardly accepting her claims, but his actions spoke louder than words. He was beginning to secretly verify her claims, becoming her reluctant, initially hidden, ally. He might have even subtly changed his tone when speaking about the Heron's lament to casual visitors. A quiet, almost imperceptible shift that only Clara noticed. Meanwhile, news of Clara's new old bottle and her strange ideas about a lost ship and hidden treasure quickly spread like wildfire through Bethany Miller's clique at school. Bethany, a type B antagonist, misguided and arrogant in her own superficial world, saw Clara's discovery as another opportunity to publicly ridicule her. She was furious that Clara was getting any attention, especially for something so weird. Can you believe Clara Bethany sneered to her friends in the schoolyard, scrolling through her social media feed, looking for the latest gossip? She's claiming she found a secret message in a dirty old bottle that says our town's founders were pirates or something. She's totally making it up for attention. Trash collector Clara is just desperate for someone to notice her ugly bottles. Her clique giggled, and soon, the entire school was whispering about Clara's hoax. Bethany even posted thinly veiled mockery on her social media, fueling the rumors and publicly discrediting Clara amongst their peers. She believed she was protecting the school's reputation from Clara's outlandish claims, completely oblivious to the real truth lurking beneath the surface. Simultaneously, more dangerous whispers of the lost Azure Tier and the possible involvement of a revered founding family, the Thorndikes, reached the ears of Mayor Arthur Thorne. Mayor Thorne, a descendant of the Thorndike family, was a powerful, ruthless man, deeply invested in maintaining his family's pristine reputation and, more secretly, in the potential for wealth that the fabled sapphire represented. He was a Type A antagonist, driven by greed, fear of scandal, and a cunning willingness to manipulate. The idea of a mere child uncovering a century-old secret that could tarnish his family's name and potentially reveal a lost treasure was an immediate, unacceptable threat. Mayor Thorne quickly moved to control the narrative. He subtly manipulated the local media outlets, particularly the Heron Bay Chronicle, which was heavily reliant on town funding and advertising. He had them publish seemingly innocuous articles that dismissed Clara's claims as childish fantasies and amateurish hoaxes, attributing them to overactive imaginations and the lingering effects of maritime folklore. The articles subtly discredited Clara's character, painting her as an attention seeker. He also began to subtly intimidate Mr. Croft, making veiled threats to the Historical Society's already precarious funding if sensationalist nonsense was pursued. He implied that such unfounded rumors could damage the town's tourist appeal and its historical integrity. His goal was clear: to prevent Clara from digging deeper, from finding further proof, from uncovering potentially damaging historical truths about his ancestors, or, worse, from claiming the treasure for herself. The stage was set for a quiet, yet dangerous, confrontation between a girl and her message, and the powerful forces determined to bury the truth once more. The air in Heron Bay, usually thick with the scent of brine and pine, was now heavy with a different kind of tension. The whispers about Clara's discovery had mutated, fueled by Bethany's schoolyard taunts and Mayor Thorne's subtle machinations in the local media. What began as schoolyard gossip had now curdled into suspicion, a quiet unease permeating the town's annual celebration of its heritage. The Heron Bay Maritime Festival, usually a joyous affair of seafood stalls, jaunty sea shanties, and quaint craft vendors, now felt like a stage set for a very public dismissal. Mayor Thorne, cunning and calculating, had strategically positioned himself to solidify his control over the narrative, aiming to definitively silence Clara's claims before they could gain any real traction. Clara, with Mr. Croft's reluctant but growing assistance, felt the walls closing in. Their efforts to gather further evidence, to cross-reference the cryptic clues in the message with historical records and local lore, were met with constant obstruction. Every official channel seemed mysteriously closed. Librarians suddenly couldn't find the specific historical maps they needed. Access to old municipal archives was inexplicably denied due to maintenance issues. It was Mayor Thorne's subtle influence at play, his network of connections ensuring that no one dared to openly challenge his narrative or his family's pristine image. At school, Bethany Miller and her clique escalated their torment. They didn't just whisper now. They openly mocked Clara in the hallways, their laughter echoing cruelly. "Still looking for your pirate gold," trash collector Clara Bethany would sneer, loud enough for others to hear. "Maybe you should go dig in the landfill. You might find a crown there." Rumors spread that Clara was making things up for attention, trying to escape the mundane reality of her dirty hobby. The isolation Clara had always felt sharpened into a painful point. She ate her lunches alone, her gaze fixed on the bustling cafeteria, feeling the invisible wall of judgment around her. This constant public pressure forced a grim realization upon Clara: she truly stood alone. Mr. Croft, though increasingly intrigued and helpful, was still bound by the rigid skepticism of his academic world and the precarious funding of his historical society. He provided quiet advice, lending her obscure texts and historical knowledge, but he couldn't openly defy the mayor's narrative without risking his own professional standing. Clara understood that she must find concrete, irrefutable proof, a piece of evidence so undeniable it would shatter the century of lies and expose the truth of the Heron's lament. She would have to rely solely on her intuitive understanding of the message, her uncanny connection to the past, and Mr. Croft's academic knowledge to guide her through the labyrinth of history and deceit. The weight of vindication, not just for herself, but for the truth itself, rested squarely on her small shoulders. The pressure intensified when Mayor Thorne, with a flourish that masked his true intentions, announced a special historical preservation fundraiser event for the final day of the Maritime Festival. This was no ordinary fundraiser. It was a cunning trap, a thinly veiled attempt to divert attention from Clara's claims and to officially declare the Heron's lament mystery an unsolvable legend. His plan was to present a fabricated, officially sanctioned narrative that would put the mystery to rest forever, thereby shutting down any further inquiry into the Thorndyke family's involvement. He had commissioned a local historian, eager for mayoral favor, to write a definitive piece on the Heron's Lament's purely natural demise, solidifying the lie. To make matters worse, a rare, unusually low tide was predicted to occur only during a small, specific window on that very same day, precisely at dawn. This particular low tide, according to her great-grandfather's cryptic map, was crucial for accessing a specific, hidden location mentioned in the message, a narrow, treacherous passage to a submerged ruin that only fully revealed itself in the lowest ebb. It was a crucial window of opportunity, a geographical ticking clock. If Clara couldn't reach that spot and find the final piece of evidence before the tide turned, before Mayor Thorne made his definitive declaration, the mystery would be buried forever, not just under official pronouncements, but under the rising waters of Heron Bay. The morning of the festival's final day dawned cold and gray. The air, usually festive, crackled with a palpable tension. Clara, her mind racing, met Mr. Farr Croft before dawn, dressed in her oldest, most practical clothes. He looked tired, but determined. "The tide is turning. Clara," he said, his voice grim. "We don't have much time. Mayor Thorne's event starts in 3 hours." They rushed to the hidden inlet, a place even more treacherous than Devil's Snare Point. The low tide had indeed revealed a narrow, slippery passage through jagged rocks, its walls slick with seaweed. The message in the bottle, now almost translucent with age, seemed to vibrate in Clara's hand, a living compass guiding her. She felt the subtle pulls of the forgotten currents, the faint echoes of the lost ship, a symphony only she could truly hear. She scrambled over the exposed rocks, her small body nimble, her focus absolute. "Mr." Croft followed, his movements slower, his academic mind struggling to reconcile the wildness of their quest with the precise nature of his profession. The location, described in the message as the Morning Stone's Embrace, was a cluster of oddly shaped, water-worn boulders at the very edge of the receding tide line. Beyond them, the turbulent water churned, revealing glimpses of twisted metal, remnants of the Heron's Lament itself. The message's final clue was a cryptic verse where the raven's shadow meets the weeping willow's root. "The azure tear shall bloom from sorrow's fruit." There was no weeping willow in sight, only the vast, unforgiving ocean. Clara felt a wave of despair. Had she misinterpreted the message? Was this all for nothing? The wind howled, mimicking the cries of a lost soul. She remembered her recurring dream, the glowing blue bottle, the lost ship. And then, a fragment of her great-grandfather's map flashed in her mind, a tiny, almost imperceptible symbol near the Morning Stones, a small drawing of a twisted root and a bird. It wasn't a literal weeping willow. It was a specific sunken root formation, now barely visible beneath the low tide, that, when the sun hit it at a certain angle, cast a shadow resembling a raven's wing. This was the unseen light, the subtle clue that only her unique intuition, honed by years of studying the forgotten details of the bay, could decipher. She pointed frantically. "Mr. Croft, the root and the shadow." They scrambled towards the indicated spot, the tide already beginning to turn, tiny rivulets of water creeping back up the exposed rocks. They dug frantically with their hands, sand and shells flying. They found nothing. Mr. Croft, panting, looked at the rising tide. "Clara, it's no use, the water's coming back. We'll be trapped. There's nothing here." He was on the verge of giving up, his skepticism reasserting itself against the fading hope. This was the ultimate test, the moment of profound solitude for the hero. Clara closed her eyes, clutching the amber bottle to her chest. She focused, pushing past the disappointment, past the fear. She remembered the feeling of the bottle calling to her, the faint hum, and then a subtle, almost imperceptible vibration in the very ground beneath her hand. It wasn't the roar of the ocean. It was a deeper, more resonant hum, emanating from beneath the earth. Her scarred wrist, the one from the seagull rescue, felt a faint prickling. It was a feeling she instinctively recognized. A deeper connection to the hidden life of the bay. She attributed it to just a feeling, but it was subtly more than that, hinting at an unusual, almost empathic connection to the city's infrastructure. She opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on a small, perfectly round indentation in the sand, directly beside the raven's shadow root. It was precisely the size and shape of the base of her amber bottle. Here she shouted, her voice thin against the wind, but filled with absolute certainty. The bottle. It fits here. She carefully placed the amber bottle into the indentation. For a moment, nothing. The tide crept closer, covering their feet. Despair threatened to consume her. Then, with a subtle click, a faint hum that resonated deeply in the water, a section of the rock and sand, previously solid, slowly, impossibly, slid inward. A dark, narrow opening was revealed, leading into a hidden cave. From within, an ethereal glow pulsed, deep blue and unmistakable. Clara gasped. It wasn't a random find. It was a meticulously crafted hidden entrance, designed to be revealed only by the precise alignment of the bottle, the tide, and the ancient wisdom that Clara, unknowingly, carried within her. Mayor Thorne's public dismissal was minutes away. The race against time, and against a century of lies, was down to its final, breathless seconds. The Heron Bay Maritime Festival buzzed with a manufactured gaiety, a thin veneer over the undercurrent of unease that Clara's wild claims had stirred. Banners snapped in the wind, seagulls cried overhead, and the scent of fried clams mingled with the distant strains of a lively sea shanty band. On the main stage, erected with much fanfare overlooking the sparkling bay, Mayor Arthur Thorne, impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of confident authority, prepared for his definitive declaration. He stood beside a large, old-fashioned chart depicting the heron's lament caught in a furious storm, a visual aid for the official narrative he was about to deliver. Miles away, hidden deep within the treacherous, now exposed grotto, Clara and Mr. Croft stood at the precipice of discovery. The low tide, a crucial window of opportunity, was rapidly receding. Tiny rivulets of water already creeping back up the slick, barnacle-encrusted rocks. The narrow opening to the hidden chamber, revealed by Clara's intuitive placement of the amber bottle, pulsed with an ethereal blue glow, beckoning them inward. The roar of the ocean felt immense, a primal force threatening to reclaim its secrets. "We have to go in, Mr. Croft, now, before the tide turns," Clara urged, her voice a fierce whisper, her eyes fixed on the beckoning light. Mr. Croft, his face a mixture of awe and trepidation, nodded. His academic skepticism had utterly crumbled in the face of the undeniable evidence before him. "Indeed. Clara, this is extraordinary." He pulled a small, battery-powered lantern from his bag, its beam cutting a shaky path into the darkness of the passage. They squeezed through the narrow opening, the rock walls slick and cold against their skin. The passage opened into a small, echoing cave chamber. The air was still, cool, and carried a faint, sweet scent, like old wood and sea salt. In the center of the chamber, illuminated by the otherworldly blue glow emanating from within, stood a perfectly preserved wooden chest. It was ancient, its oak dark and encrusted with barnacles, but its brass fittings gleamed faintly. This was it, the heart of the heron's lament mystery. Clara approached it, her hands trembling as she reached out. This was her crucible. She struggled with the barnacle-encrusted lid, her small hands raw from the effort. Mr. Croft tried to help, but the chest seemed impossibly heavy, almost as if sealed by the weight of history itself. The clues from the message, The fleeting images from her recurring dream of the glowing bottle and the lost ship flooded her mind. She remembered a specific detail from her dream, a unique beacon stone on the ship's prow, carved with the same symbol etched into her amber bottle. The dream had been a vision of truth, not a fantasy. She looked at the top of the chest, her fingers tracing the faint outline of a ship's wheel carved into the wood. Then, her gaze fell upon a small, intricate indentation on the chest's surface, designed to hold something specific. It was the exact shape of the base of her amber bottle. Clara looked at Mr. Croft, then back at the chest. The bottle. It's not just the key to the passage, it's the key to the treasure. She gently took the amber bottle, still humming with its faint resonance, and carefully placed its base into the indentation. This was the held breath moment. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. The echoes in the cave seemed to amplify the drumming of her own heart. The air felt thick, heavy with the weight of a century of secrets. Outside, they could hear the faint, muffled sounds of the festival, and the distant voice of Mayor Thorne beginning his speech, definitively declaring the Heron's Lament a mere legend. All seemed lost. Then, with a subtle click, followed by a faint, resonant thrum that vibrated through the very bedrock of the cave, the chest's ancient lock sprung open. The lid creaked upwards, slowly, majestically, revealing the contents within. Clara gasped. It was not just gold, though glinting coins lay nestled among velvet. At the very center, nestled on a bed of faded silk, lay the legendary azure tear, a sapphire of impossible size and brilliance, glowing with an internal, ethereal light, exactly as it had in Clara's dream. Its light, a deep, mesmerizing blue, pulsed with a living energy, illuminating the entire chamber. And alongside it, carefully preserved in a waterproof, lead-lined cylinder, was a captain's log. Its cover, though faded, clearly read, "The Lament's Reckoning, Captain Alistair Finch." Mr. Croft reached for it, his hands trembling. He pulled out the bound pages, his eyes scanning the faded ink. His breath hitched. The log wasn't just a record of a voyage. It was a meticulous, chilling confession. It detailed the true, nefarious circumstances of the Heron's Lament's sinking, a deliberate act of sabotage orchestrated by wealthy, influential figures who sought to collect on its insurance and eliminate a rival trade route. It explicitly named the Thorndikes, Mayor Thorne's ancestors, as the masterminds behind the crime, detailing their greed, their manipulation, and their cold-blooded betrayal. "Clara," Mr. Croft whispered, his voice hoarse with disbelief and righteous anger. This is everything. It's all here. The truth." Back on the main festival stage, Mayor Thorne, blissfully unaware of the earth-shattering discovery unfolding beneath their feet, reached the climax of his speech. "And so, my fellow citizens," he declared, his voice ringing with false authority, "we officially lay to rest the myth of the Heron's Lament. It was a tragic accident of nature, nothing more. We have commissioned a definitive historical document to prove it." He triumphantly held up a scroll, a fabricated historical account designed to definitively close the mystery. "Let us remember the past, but embrace a future free of baseless fantasies." He prepared to sign the document, sealing the century of lies. Then, a sudden, bright flash of ethereal blue light, impossibly brilliant, pierced through the overcast sky, reflecting off the water of the bay. It emanated directly from the hidden cove, a beacon of truth. The crowd gasped, turning their heads towards the unexpected phenomenon. Moments later, Clara and Mr. Croft emerged from the passage, Clara clutching the now glowing azure tear, and Mr. Croft clutching the ancient captain's log. Mr. Croft, seizing the electrifying moment, raised the ancient logbook high. His voice, usually gruff, resonated with newfound authority, cutting through the stunned silence. "Mayor Thorne," he boomed, his voice carrying across the bay, The truth has arrived. The heron's lament was no accident. He began to read excerpts from the captain's log, his voice gaining power with each damning sentence, detailing the betrayal, the sabotage, the cold-blooded murder. The words, echoing across the stunned crowd, were a cataclysmic revelation. Ms. Evelyn Reed, present at the festival, having remained in Heron Bay due to her postponed international flight, watched in stunned silence. She had dismissed Clara, but the undeniable glow of the sapphire and the authority in Mr. Croft's voice were impossible to ignore. Her corporate mind, recognizing the sheer magnitude of the discovery, snapped into action. She rushed forward, pushing through the bewildered crowd, reaching Clara's side, her smartphone already recording. She began shouting updates to news outlets she still had connections with, validating the discovery to the stunned national media who had flocked to the festival. This is real. The Azure Tear. The lost logbook, a century-old cover-up. The mayor's face, initially smug, then shocked by the blue light, turned to ashen gray as Mr. Croft's words exposed his family's dark secret. His eyes darted nervously, his polished facade cracking, then shattering. The crowd erupted in a tumultuous wave of shock, then awe at the glowing sapphire, then righteous indignation as the full scope of the betrayal sank in. Chants of justice for the lament and truth began to ripple through the throng. Clara, the ridiculed girl, her small hands still clutching the glowing azure tear, stood tall amidst the chaos. She was instantly transformed into a celebrated hero, her quiet, unusual passion publicly vindicated in the most dramatic, undeniable way possible. The truth, painstakingly unearthed by a discarded bottle and a girl's unwavering intuition, had not only solved a century-old mystery, but had brought down a powerful man and rewritten the very history of Heron Bay. The Azure Tear, a symbol of tragedy, now shone as a beacon of long-awaited justice. The cataclysmic truth, unleashed by a simple message in an old bottle, reverberated through Heron Bay with the force of a seismic shockwave. Mayor Arthur Thorne, exposed on the grand stage of the Maritime Festival, found his meticulously crafted facade of respectability crumbling to dust. The damning evidence contained within Captain Finch's logbook, meticulously detailing his ancestors' greed, their calculated sabotage of the Heron's lament, and the cold-blooded sacrifice of a ship for profit, was undeniable. The local media, initially manipulated by Thorne, now turned on him with a vengeful fervor, hungry for the scandal. Investigations, launched swiftly by state authorities, now alerted to the gravity of the discovery. Uncovered layers of past financial manipulations and intricate cover-ups related to the lost cargo and the insurance payouts from a century ago. It was a web of deceit that stretched through generations of the Thorndike family, their wealth and influence built on a bedrock of lies. Mayor Thorne was not just publicly disgraced. He was swiftly arrested for obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and numerous financial crimes unearthed during the ensuing probe. He lost his position. His family's once unquestionable influence in Heron Bay evaporated, and their historical estate, a symbol of their tainted legacy, was seized pending legal proceedings. His ambition, rooted in maintaining a false image and protecting ill-gotten gains, consumed him entirely, leaving him with nothing but a ruined name and the bitter taste of utter defeat. The truth, like the rising tide, had drowned him completely. In the wake of the revelation, the ripples of change touched even the furthest corners of Heron Bay. Bethany Miller, witnessing the undeniable proof of Clara's discovery and the overwhelming public admiration showered upon the girl she had so relentlessly teased, was profoundly humbled. The cruelty she had wielded, the sharp words she had flung, now felt like a heavy weight on her conscience. Days after the festival, she approached Clara, not with her usual sneering confidence, but with a tentative, almost shy demeanor. Her apology was genuine, tearful, and utterly without artifice. "Clara," Bethany whispered, her eyes red-rimmed. I was so awful to you. I'm so sorry. I didn't understand. I saw a bottle, and now I see a whole world. It was an awkward, yet deeply sincere moment of reconciliation, marking Bethany's transformation from a misguided bully into a newfound, if still slightly clumsy, supporter. She began to volunteer at the Historical Society, eager to learn more about the Bay's real stories. Clara's parents, overwhelmed with pride and a painful regret for their earlier dismissiveness, now openly embraced her passion. They had seen the true value of her unique perspective, the profound significance of her worthless old bottles. Her mother, tearfully, hugged her tightly, apologizing for ever doubting her. Her father, his eyes shining with admiration, offered to help her build more shelves for her burgeoning collection, now seen as a treasure trove rather than a childish phase. Their support, once lukewarm, became an unwavering pillar of strength, recognizing her profound value to their town and to history itself. Mr. Silas Croft, his academic skepticism utterly shattered by the irrefutable evidence of the captain's log and the glowing azure tear, became Clara's most ardent academic champion. His gruff exterior melted away, revealing a passionate historian eager to correct the record. He tirelessly worked to verify and promote her findings, collaborating with national historical societies and maritime archaeologists to re-evaluate the true history of the Heron's Lament and its connection to the Thorndike family. He authored new, definitive papers, ensuring Clara received full credit for the discovery. He recognized that Clara's unique intuitive talent, combined with his scholarly rigor, was a powerful, unstoppable force for uncovering truth. For Clara, there was no traditional job offer. Her unique talent transcended conventional roles. Instead, the town of Heron Bay, now invigorated by its incredible history and supported by national historical societies eager to study the newly unveiled past, decided to establish the Heron Bay Maritime Mystery and Discovery Center. This state-of-the-art facility was built on the very grounds near the old docks, incorporating salvaged elements from the Heron's Lament wreckage. Clara was appointed its honorary junior curator and lead researcher. This prestigious position allowed her to fully pursue her passion. Her uncanny talent for finding and interpreting historical objects now celebrated as a vital asset. The centerpiece of the Discovery Center was a meticulously crafted exhibit showcasing the story of the Heron's Lament. The deep amber bottle, now reverently displayed, was enshrined as the catalyst of truth, and at its heart, behind thick, bulletproof glass, lay the dazzling azure tear, its internal light still pulsing faintly. A mesmerizing blue beacon. It symbolized not just the lost treasure, but the profound power of forgotten truths finally brought to light, and the enduring resilience of the human spirit. Weeks later, a profound sense of peace and purpose settled over the quiet, newly dedicated Discovery Center. The air, once heavy with the weight of unaddressed history, now vibrated with the excited whispers of visitors and the gentle murmur of discovery. Clara sat with Mr. Croft and her parents in a quiet corner, looking out at the glittering bay, now seen through eyes that understood its deeper stories. Mr. Croft, his face beaming with a quiet pride he rarely displayed, clutched a leather-bound replica of Captain Finch's logbook. "Clara," he remarked, his voice soft with reverence, "you found more than just treasure. You unearthed a century of truth. You corrected a grievous injustice. And in doing so, you rewrote our town's entire history." He gestured towards the azure tear, glowing serenely in its display case. "That gem is beautiful, but the true treasure is the story it told, and the honesty it brought back to Heron Bay." Clara, holding a new, clean glass bottle, its clear surface unblemished, ran her thumb over its smooth curves. "Every bottle, every forgotten object, holds a story." "Mr. Croft," she replied, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. "You just have to know how to listen for the whispers, to see beyond the dirt, beyond the discard. The most valuable things are often the ones others deem worthless." Her parents nodded, their eyes reflecting their daughter's wisdom. They reflected on the importance of looking beyond the obvious, of valuing what others dismiss as mere junk, and the enduring power of hidden histories waiting to be discovered. The true resolution wasn't just the exposure of a crime or the recovery of a gem. It was the quiet, profound peace of a community reconciled with its past, a family healed by truth, and a young girl finding her rightful place in the world, her unique gift finally recognized as a light for all. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that the most extraordinary truths can be hidden in the most ordinary things, and that quiet passions can lead to monumental discoveries, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.